OK, there was Ed Conway. Back to our main story tonight, which is the defection of Natalie Elphicke from the Conservatives to the Labour Party. Now, as we heard a little earlier from our political editor, Beth Rigby, we're hearing a lot of the Labour MPs behind the scenes are not necessarily happy about her being welcomed into their ranks. Certainly we hear it was an announcement that took most of the party today by total surprise. Well, I'm pleased to say that here with me now is the Labour Party's chair, Anneliese Dodds. Thanks for being on the programme. First things first, when did you first hear that Natalie Elphicke was going to join the party?
Good evening. Well, these things are very much kept under wraps, so I heard about this today as well. And of course, Natalie Elphicke isn't the first Conservative to have crossed the floor. Now, she's the third Conservative MP to have taken that decision that the best way to serve her constituents and indeed the country is not to stick with the Conservatives, but to choose Labour. Yeah, we're hearing it was quite a small, tight sort of magic circle of people who knew about this in advance. I mean, I'm guessing you were told about it before PMQs. I was, yes, but I have to say that I haven't been surprised when we've seen those both Conservative MPs but also Conservative voters deciding that they can't stick with a failing Conservative Party anymore.
You must. I mean, look, I get it that, you know, there's defections that are happening. We've seen, of course, Dan Poulter. You must have been surprised when you heard it was Natalie Elphicke. I mean, this is someone who's part of the European Research Group. You know, she's seen as, you know, we hear when Number 10 found out she was defecting, they thought she was going to go to Reform.
Well, actually, I think when you look at Natalie Elphicke's statement, it's very clear why she's taken that decision. You know, she talks a lot about the fact that there has been appalling loss of life, of course, in the Channel, the fact that the government doesn't have a plan to deal with those issues around migration, but she also talks as well about housing, the terrible situation for her constituents, particularly focusing on the situation for children in temporary accommodation. And, you know, she's very clear that it's only Labour that's got a plan to get Britain building, and also only Labour that's got a plan to deal with those issues around migration as well. So I think it's quite right that she's chosen Labour now, and she's putting her constituents first by doing that.
It's a journey, though. You'll admit it's a journey she's been on. Right? In April 2023, I mean, I'm not talking about 10 years ago, this is last year, don't trust Labour on immigration, they really want open borders. She describes Keir Starmer as Sir Softy.
Well, clearly she has made that journey, and I'm pleased that she has. And, you know, it's the same journey that we saw last Thursday many former Conservative voters making, as well as indeed many voters for other parties too. They're looking afresh at what Labour's setting out. They can see it's only Labour that's got a plan to get Britain building, to deliver those homes that we desperately need, to make sure that we do have security, that we do have public services that are back on their feet, not on their knees, and they're voting accordingly.
Not everyone is happy about this, though, right, in your party. If there was kind of deafening silence from many Labour MPs on Twitter, and then behind the scenes, we've been hearing from some of them as well. Because of what she said about Labour previously, but also, you know, there was some controversy around her selection to her husband's former seat in Dover. She was suspended for a day from the House of Commons for improperly trying to influence a judge over her husband's trial for sexual assault. And, you know, some Labour women are unhappy. We heard Beth Rigby speaking about that earlier. Aggie Chambre at Politico said one Labour MP told her the news left her in tears because I thought we had some values that were sacrosanct, but we don't.
Well, of course, sexual assault and harassment is incredibly serious. There was a process, both a judicial process and a parliamentary process that was gone through, quite rightly so, and that applied to Natalie Elphicke as well, as it should have done. And I think it's really important that we do have robust processes around these matters, and as I say, they applied to Natalie Elphicke as well, quite rightly.
Have you had any Labour MPs getting in touch with you unhappy with what's happened?
So I haven't had anybody contacting me to say that they didn't want that decision to have been taken. I think actually what we've seen here is reflective of the situation up and down the country. They believe many promises were made, as indeed, again, Natalie Elphicke herself referred to, particularly in that 2019 manifesto, promises that were made around house building, around public services, around migration policies, and promises that have just not been held to, where there's not been delivery, and it's been ordinary people who've paid the price.
I mean, look, we said that Natalie Elphicke's gone on a journey. You're going to have to go on a journey as well, aren't you? Because I just want to have a look at a tweet that the local Labour Party in Dover and Deal sent out about some of the MPs in Kent. There you go, Dover and Deal Labour. After a bad Christmas on Twitter, we're wondering, is Miss Elphicke Kent's worst MP? I mean, you'll be pleased with that. You're on that list there, but you're not the worst MP. It's Natalie Elphicke. Have they changed their minds then?
Well, actually, what I've heard is that there is support for Natalie Elphicke's decision, including actually amongst many of her constituents. So I just heard actually in a previous programme that there was a clip of one saying that she's someone who's always been passionate about housing, and obviously she's not seeing that delivery of housing that local people need under the Conservatives, and she's putting her constituents first on this. And I know that local Labour Party is desperately concerned about that as well, particularly the situation actually for children in overcrowded housing and temporary accommodation. And so she's put that front and centre of her decision to switch to Labour. I'm sure many voters will be taking that decision too.
I'm just trying to get my head around, what's the kind of red line for someone you wouldn't accept in the party if it embarrassed Rishi Sunak? Because I get that this isn't embarrassing for Rishi Sunak. Today, a Labour spokesperson said, in response to a question about whether they'd rule out Nigel Farage being able to join the Labour Party, we have conversations with all sorts of people who want to come and support the party.
Well, of course, Nigel Farage is someone who's well outside any kind of Labour values. He's proven that time and time again. I mean, I would say that question actually is one that should be levelled at Rishi Sunak, because of course he hasn't ruled out him standing in the future as a Conservative MP, or indeed being a future Conservative Party leader, as I understand it.
What's the difference between Nigel Farage and Natalie Elphicke then?
Well, obviously, he's someone whose values are completely inimical to the Labour Party. I think in what Natalie Elphicke has set out today, she's very clearly shown that she's very concerned about the issues that both Labour MPs are concerned about, and Labour members, and indeed many Labour voters. She's very concerned about the impact of that lack of delivery of housing on people up and down our country. We've got families at the moment, I'm sure watching this actually, who are in desperately overcrowded housing, in housing that's of incredibly poor quality. They've been promised by the Conservatives that there would be more homes built, and that simply has not been delivered. And she's right to be saying this has got to be fixed, and it's only Labour that's got that plan to get Britain building again.
The final question I want to ask you is something that I spoke to Ash Sarkar about a bit earlier. Natalie Elphicke has the Labour whip. Diane Abbott, Britain's first black female MP, doesn't. Is that right?
Well, of course, there has been a process that has been ongoing, a disciplinary process. It's one that does need to be held to, that needs to be applied. It is a robust process, and rightly so.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Anneliese Dodds, they're the chair of the Labour Party. Thank you.